always find these meetings incredibly useful because I learn an enormous amount, and I think this morning in particular, just learning about the way different people approach some of the issues, I think was just extremely interesting. And obviously there were messages for DFE there about joining up with schools and all that kind of stuff, which I know and take, and I shall do my best with, so that was really, really helpful. I also like going on visits, so I've been to Sheffield recently and I'll be going to Lancashire soon. Really like that because there is nothing like seeing it. And I know when the Minister, Anne Milton, visited Lancashire, she came back, and the next week we were in a meeting with HOLEX, and then later on with actually Mark from City Lit and a few others. She mentioned family learning voluntarily. She said, oh yes, I remember. And I was just like, yes. And although it's not a hard sell, I don't think it is a hard sell, I think it is still quite hard to explain what it is until you see it and feel it and get that passion. So I think the Minister now knows what it is, so when it's talked about, it'll have that real resonance. So thank you very much for hosting visits to myself and others. Okay, let's get on. So policy priorities in the department, I've just focused, apart from the last one, on things that are kind of within the adult education space and the impact on that. The first one obviously is broad and goes across the schools and the pre-16 stuff as well. So social mobility, there was an action plan, we called it, what do we call it, unlocking talent, fulfilling potential. I always get the words wrong, thank you. It's always good from DFE to get the words in the right order. Anyway, so that had a lot of stuff around life stages. So it started off with the early years and went up into adult education, which I thought was a useful way of looking at it, because that's kind of how we view our lives, isn't it? So I think it was quite good. Within the first chapter on more of the early years, and early language development, there was a specific action in there that had a mention of family learning, which is really, really helpful. It was about looking at the role of family learning and adult literacy more generally, so that would include the community learning side of it, I think, in supporting parents to support their children with their early language development. So that feels like a hook we should grasp, we should be able to grasp that and make something of it, so that's kind of what I'm doing. Technical education and apprenticeships, you're probably broadly familiar with that, because I imagine quite a lot of providers, other providers you may join up with or talk to, know about that. So this is the introduction of the new T levels, which will be the equivalent of A levels, but based on the technical education side of things. Apprenticeships, you know, they've been around for a little while now, we all know what they are. They are really, really massive pushes in the department. It's quite hard to get this agenda up there when you've got that, but we're trying. Learning throughout adult life perhaps is a slightly easier hook for us. So that's more about, okay, so people don't just stop when they're 18 learning, they do carry on. In fact, we need them to carry on because the world is changing, we need to adapt to new technologies, people are living longer, all those sorts of things. So that is very, very key, and I think it's key from the family learning perspective, in that you get the parents and carers in the door, you then can perhaps move them on to other things, which is, I know, what you all intend to do. And then community learning more generally, obviously the same link there. Children's attainment, clearly that's always going to be a biggie in DFE, isn't it? Family learning, as we've talked about already today, has a huge part to play on that. Working directly with the children, but most importantly, what we've been talking about today, working with the parents, the carers, so that they have that sense of confidence, ability to be able to help their children, but also that kind of love of learning within the family. So they're kind of, for me, the main priorities, and there are some clear hooks with some of those for family learning. So there's slightly more detail around the things we're doing at the moment around career learning. So you've probably heard the National Retraining Scheme. At the moment we're working out what that is, so it's all up for grabs. So that, I think, is an opportunity for us to really think about, okay, how would we potentially play into that? And I know a lot of different people are thinking about that. My basic skills colleagues are thinking about that, on how to input into that. The digital and construction is our first kind of bit we're doing, because they're skills that are needed. That's kind of higher level skills than I imagine the family and community learning would work with, but it doesn't mean we can't help develop the people who then go on to do those things. You probably, some of you have applied for this. I hope some of you have applied for that, the Flexible Learning Fund. That's out there to try and test, in the spirit of trying to work out what works before we design a scheme that actually is based on no evidence whatsoever. We thought, let's go out and find out what works. So we've invited people to bid in for that. I'm hoping there will be a sufficient amount of family and community learning providers that A, bid in, and B, make it to the finish line on there, because I think there's a huge wealth of experience on how to actually engage people flexibly, out of hours, digital. I'm looking at you, Karen. All those sorts of things. I think it would be a real shame if we didn't do that. So thank you for those who have applied, and fingers crossed. Second set of pilots is actually in specific geographical areas. They're doing more, I think, around kind of the cost and the different balances of how much you're actually paying, cost being a barrier there. And we did talk about that actually in Wales with your site safety, blah blah, whatever it was, which was really interesting. That cost is a barrier if you want to take up a specific vocational certificate in order to get you onto the construction site or whatever it might be. There is evidence, I think, a lot that cost is a barrier, so we're trying to think through that. Of course, everyone who wants to retrain for new jobs or upskill themselves to get the next job on the ladder, got to have these basic skills, your English, maths and your digital. A big push there, and I know this is directly relevant to the work you do, because obviously a lot of what you do is around the literacy and numeracy, whether that's specific courses where you teach parents how to do, what was I doing, bus stop division or something I did, yes, oh my word.
We weren't doing it very well.
I was actually really bad at it. Anyway, but we all know they're the hooks, aren't they? Help your child with their homework, really, really important, but obviously it improves the parent or the carers' literacy and numeracy while they're there, but also the embedded stuff, and I think that's really important. Let's not frighten people off with a numeracy course, let's embed it in other stuff, and we've all talked about that in relation to health eating courses and measuring things. It's all absolutely brilliant. We've done better on literacy than numeracy over time, so I think that is still a kind of one that we need to crack. And I think family learning's got a role in that. There is a lot of people thinking about, I don't know how they teach maths at school anymore, but there is a lot of interest in supporting their children on how to do that better. So that's a key area, I think, where we can make impact. I've written community learning, but it's community and family learning because it's kind of from the same bit of budget, if you like. We all know it's flexible in terms of its funding, and that's something that we're really keen to make a thing of. I think otherwise if we don't, there's a danger. I don't think it is a big danger, but potentially someone might say, well, why are we funding this differently? Why don't we just chuck it in with the ssame old formula funded AEB? We have to make the case around that flexibility and how important that is for delivering what we deliver, helps us reach the harder to reach. You perhaps want to cost more, you can have smaller lessons, all this stuff. I think that's part of the story we need to tell to make sure that we retain that as key flexibility for us. The family learning side of that, we have talked about hooks of getting people through the door, and I think family learning is that friendly environment, that approachable environment, going out to see people, see what they actually want, working with what's there. I think that is really, really key for that stepping stone onto perhaps progression onto something else. It does do the literacy and numeracy, it gives people a taste for learning, you can kind of see that, the stories people tell about it, there is a real feeling there. And I think linking to Margaret's work later, I think there is a sense that we would also want it to do something about the children's attainment as well, and their confidence and their kind of their just general communication skills, behaviour, whatever that might be. We want to deal with that whole family, and you're talking about the intergenerational challenges and attitudes, that love of learning. I think that aspiration, I think, is really important. And I know that our skills minister, Anne Milton, as I said, was talking about it. She was talking about the outreach stuff, actually. She was saying, well, do we go to the school gates and do we do that? And she mentioned schools. She mentioned, approaching people. So I think there is something in there that she gets intuitively about how this could work. We just need to kind of explain it in a way that it fits in with that. She talks a lot about people's motivation to learn as well. So she goes, fine, it might be free. The basic skills, English and maths is free, but we still can't get the take-up we want. What are those barriers? What is the motivation for people going? She's really keen on that. So if you've got some things to say about that, that would be really helpful. We all know these, as I said the last time I gave this presentation, we probably all have a similar list, but the wording might be slightly different, explain it in slightly different ways, that's all fine. This for me, I know someone told me that Melissa doesn't like that term actually.
Yeah, she did.
So that's not there, I didn't say that. Oh no, look, it really has gone. But I think this does show that we have got that sense of this is what we can achieve, this is what it achieves. How do we tell that story in a way that just doesn't feel disparate and complicated to understand, but we do the kind of, if we can measure this hard stuff, how many people go on to the accredited courses, how many people end up in employment, fine. We may think the employment bit in particular, not for everybody, but for some might be quite a step away, a long-term thing. What do we do to demonstrate steps on the way to that? There's basic skill stuff, actually, we've talked about that. Oh, look, is it a touch screen? That's too fancy. That's way too fancy for me. So I think it's really important to make the case that when we do cooking, we're not just doing cooking, we're doing that stuff as well. And you're all good at that, I know you are. The health and well-being, so I think you were saying before about having an interest in that, and we have had sessions around that. That's a really, really important one to think about as well. I think the loneliness issue isn't just older people, but it is older people as well. But I think the way that family and community learning work in that kind of approachable, accessible way gives people that sense of this is something I'm doing this week, and gives them that confidence. So soft skills that aren't called soft skills, what do we call them, by the way? We're not called soft skills. Well, let's just call them that. Let's change the minister's view of it. Again, there's a long list. It goes on to down here, and you might have slightly different words. But these are all things that employers want. They're always telling us, I can train somebody to be an X. This stuff, really hard, and I think that's why soft is actually not so good, because it is hard. It is hard to do that.
Call them employability skills, and when you look at them, actually, even though people are further away, they are really.
So maybe that's because she's conscious that if you say that, people don't pay attention to it. Yes. Call them employability skills.
They're family skills as well.
Yes, they are.
We use learning to learn.
We call them
because it's transferable skills.
It's
learning skills.
Yeah. I should change that. Because that's obviously pants, and we need to call it something else. Priorities moving forward. We actually talked about opportunities earlier, didn't we? What are those opportunities? What are those hooks? That's the social mobility one. That is still there. We have a different Secretary of State, but he's still very keen. He does talk, and Margaret will probably say more about this later, he does talk a lot about that early age group. I know we said family learning is throughout life of the child, and it is. But if that's where the interest is at the moment, let's, say we can do that, and then kind of, and we also do this other stuff. So let's think about how to frame that. Opportunities, I think, around the importance of adults retraining. I think it's got a massive number 10 push as well as DFE, so that is a hook. The social mobility, mentioned that. I think that does apply also to the adults, so we can play the adult card there as well. I think that's something about getting progression, not just the intergenerational, but actually for those specific parents, carers that come through the door. Making a case, this is always the tricky one, isn't it? We did talk a little bit about impact and how we have the hard data in some cases, but not all. If we have it in our own areas, how do we, when we measure it all differently, how do we aggregate that up so I can say, do you know what? This is the impact that family learning has. At the moment, I say, here are a few examples. A lot of places, I'm sure, probably all of them, do measure impact in some form or another. My case now is, if it's happening here, I'm sure it's also happening everywhere else. But it's still a bit, it's not as solid as perhaps the Treasury would like to see. But also, I don't think we go straight down that road and say, do you know what, we're just going to do the hard data on, how many jobs people get, or measure how many accredited qualifications they go on for. Yeah, we can do that, but I think it's that wider story, the richer story of individual stories of people gaining in confidence and going on to do a degree and things like that.
Yes,
it's just incredible. And actually, I think with ministers in particular, but not always, I think civil servants, we're all humans, honest. It does resonate, it really, really does, when you see that value to individuals and particular stories about where people have come from, the challenges they've faced and how family learning has helped. I think that is really, really important. But I think we do need to be a bit better at working out nationally. Locally you do it for your own future investment case, particularly in devolved areas. But also, I guess, for continuous improvement as well. So you would measure impact of some courses might not be as good as others, or might not be as good as last year. You may decide to change it as a result. So it's got that continuous improvement side of it as well. But I think the audience, both locally and nationally, for that evidence base, I think is there really for the taking. That's me. I'm also on Twitter. I haven't done many actual tweets. I've done quite a lot of retweets. I need to get better at that. But please do contact me, email, phone, whenever. with ideas, examples, reminding me to go and talk to my colleagues in schools or find out who they are first, to make those connections, because I think now the adult learning is in the same department as the pre-16 stuff. Family learning crosses both those, and I think now is the opportunity really to grasp that. So, I'm happy for questions now or after Margaret or whatever. It's fine.
Any questions for Charlotte?
From the minister's visit, have you picked up any, I suppose, any sort of key points that she liked that we could come back with evidence on, or impact cases?
The only thing I picked up on is that she voluntarily mentioned it
Okay.
when we're in these meetings, so it's obviously resonated.
Yeah.
Because I imagine being a minister, obviously I can't really imagine because I don't know what it would be like, but they must get so much stuff at
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
to actually retain something and take it to another meeting and work out,
Yeah.
you know,
Voluntarily
that it makes sense.
reference
I
it,
think
Yeah.
that's really, really good. The motivation point and the kind of the outreach point were the things that she really did talk about. So is there, and she's interested in unmet need, so is there an unmet need, and how do we make the case that there is, and how do we, you know, perhaps use that to think about how to do things differently or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So she's interested in who we're reaching, I think, as much as, and why they would be interested in coming into learning. And I think she has understood that the kind of family community learning is that dealing with people who perhaps wouldn't just go through an FE institution and go, I'll sign up to a GCSE maths, you know. It's actually getting that throughput of people and getting them ready and feeling comfortable and that progression. And the IAG stuff I always find just incredibly amazing. I mean, I'd quite like to see it actually, because I don't really know what it looks like. I've seen it in that informal at the end of the course when I was in Sheffield, and I think, God, they're actually asking people to work out what their next steps are. And it's just brilliant, because it just feels like it's part of what's expected. So it may feel a little bit like a relaxed toddler group type thing, but there's actually that, and so this is for a reason, and what do you want to do next? And they're like, oh, I might do this, might do that, and then little tactics about how then to get them onto the next thing. I think it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure it's done differently everywhere, but equally well. And I think learning about how to do that, I think, is something I need to remind myself, because I think that's a big plus for how it's done. It's done in an unthreatening, supportive way, which I think is really, really good.
Sorry.
No, that's
I was going to say, we've got The Matrix Spectre at the moment.
The Matrix.
It's all about
Keanu Reeves.
Wow. You wish.
A big black flowing coat.
I've never had a Matrix Inspector looks like that.
He doesn't look like
It doesn't. You won't get distracted then, you're right.
No, but we were talking about progression. So we were talking about IAG, and obviously all our courses, we particularly on our longer courses, it's automatic IAG. So they come in, but then if we have shorter courses, then if the tutor thinks it's appropriate, we will book an IAG session. But we're talking to the Matrix.
What is the Matrix? I missed something, haven't I? Is it something I should know? Is it an
Well,
organisation?
it's part of the SFA, isn't it?
Accreditation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got to have it.
Okay, I should know that. Sorry.
Accreditation in information advice and
Okay, yeah, I really should know that. I do now.
We like your kite mark, so
Yeah, okay.
But progression, you know, we were having a conversation, progression isn't just about IAG, it's those tiny little steps. So, for example, we've got a learner, she's in her mid-40s, wanted to do her maths for many, many years, but haven't got the courage. You know, and for her to actually come to one of our classes, and we actually had to get a tutor to go and collect her, to hold her hand, to come, because she was so nervous. And that's progression. From, you know, it's not just about, you know, what you're going to do in your future, you know, what you want to do for your future career, whether you want to volunteer or progress on to college. It's about this. I'm just saying this because this is the conversation we were having with the Matrix inspector yesterday. So
but it's also
all those tiny little steps which are huge for them, might be tiny for us.
But it always shocks me to know that you would actually go out and get them.
Yes.
And I'm like, God, that's so resource intensive and so committed, and oh wow, that's amazing. And how you say you take people to the course because she wouldn't go otherwise.
Yeah.
We call them soft outcomes, and we find them like really important. And we had a lady that did the degree. She actually got it first, but she was homophobic. Yeah. So she didn't want to come out the house.
Yeah,
So the Kelly, our lady who runs the Adult Edge, used to come pick her up and take her to class. She didn't go to a graduation because she couldn't, so they arranged one in the school.
Wow.
So like it's those little steps, she would never done that.
But it's the staff team going those extra miles that I think is a good story.
Yeah.
To tell as well.
Yeah.
But that happens in so many. I mean, it's like I couldn't get learners to go into the library. You know, it was an alien place. They didn't want to go. So you kind of, once you've got their confidence, you actually made it. When we did family skills, it was a core part of the course that they all did together to support each other. A library visit. People had never gone there before.
That's the impact on the rest of the family, isn't it? Like with this lady, okay, it sounds horrible, but she may not go far in life because I think she's not going to get out of that. She's at that age, you know, it's going to be difficult to move her on to something else. But it's the children, the family, that's, you know, they're not going to be the same as her now. They're going to lead a different path, hopefully. You can see them already in school, the confidence and the difference in her children, where would they have led to be the same as the mum eventually if they weren't taken away in that way.
So something we do on our evaluations now is we ask, why did you come on the course at the beginning? So what were your reasons for coming on the course, and what have you got out of the course? And it's being able to marry up those kind of percentages as well, and that's where you can then get those bits of actually was being able to get out the door, and because it's confidence, and I came on to gain confidence, and we've got like 80% that said they wanted to come on the course to gain confidence, but 96% then said they got confidence out of coming on this course. And I think it's being able to use those different
being able
stats
to measure the soft outcomes, and I think we can only ever do it through giving examples. That's the only way you can sort of measure exactly the soft outcomes, because to me they are the beginning. It's like Maslow's triangle, and you need that before you can progress to the rest, you know. So
it's about the narrative, isn't it? We're all very good at collecting data and doing nice
very
bar charts and
data-driven.
graphs, but actually it's in the narrative when they do their evaluations. That's the important bit that we can quite easily leave because we can't quantify it in the same way.
And you know, if you're talking to a DFE, you know, official or whatever, it's trying to put that into what does that mean for educational outcomes. So you have to have the confidence in order to do, you know, whatever it is educationally, in order then to do whatever DWP might be interested in employment over here. It's working out who you're talking to and translate it for people, because everybody wants people to feel more confident and not have mental health issues and all that kind of stuff. But it's about making the link to what that means for people's educational achievement if you're talking to DFE, and that's a trick I've got to kind of, you know, do as well when I'm talking about this, translate, because always they go, well, health should pay for it then, you know. I'm not saying we would say that, but you know, in a kind of, you know, a broad brush without the understanding. But like, well, if that's a health outcome, then why is DFE paying for?
I think that's right in local authorities as well, because if you mention sort of health and wellbeing type courses, for those authorities that have got like PCT or the NHS, it's like, again, why aren't they paying for that then? Why aren't they funding that? And so there is probably a lot more joined up working partnership funding that could be done.
Yeah.
But it's how can I put it? It's about it not being a barrier, isn't it? Or saying, oh, well, we're not doing that because they should be, then nobody does.
Yeah.
You mentioned as well, Sean, was about sort of social mobility being on top of the agenda. Is there any feeling that, like, because we would say like family learning and parental engagement would in the long run help with the social mobility of sort of making those kinds of links? And if that's not the feeling at present, what does the department think are the current drivers of social mobility within education? Excuse me.
Well, no, I think the parental stuff is coming to the fore a bit more, and Margaret will probably talk about that in a bit more, but around that home learning environment and how important it is to have that reinforcing the good stuff that might happen at school, rather than, I mean, my sister's a teacher, so you do all this stuff at school, go home and it all just falls away, and after the holidays you're back where you were at the beginning of, you know, and you know, you can understand the frustration, but there's something about that school has actually never heard of family learning. They have now because the sister is in charge of it, but it just strikes me that you know, like we say, it's free. I mean, it's not completely free in the sense that someone's got to invest time in making those relationships and maybe thinking about the room and thinking, you know, but it's pretty free compared to most interventions. So I think there is quite an appetite, I think, for thinking about the role of parents in children's education, particularly in their very early years. I think that we've then got to build on that to say, well, actually it's throughout life as well. Family learning, you know, will help parents work out how you do stop division. Therefore, you know, the children are going to have a better chance of getting their homework and reinforced at home, and just generally the role model stuff. So actually, if your parents are continuing to learn and they can now, you know, read to you or feel more confident in their learning and being positive about school because they've had a good experience of learning themselves, that obviously rubs off. So it's that whole environment. I mean, they're at home or they're at school, aren't they, if you count all the days in a year.
I was just thinking that one of the things that gets often overlooked, and we all know about this, is that raising of aspirations is like broadening horizons, looking at different possibilities, other ways of life, other ways of being. And that's a really difficult thing to measure, really, really hard. But we know that by doing that for the parents, we do it for the children, we do it for the extended family. And if we can find a way to capture that, that'd be great. Please tell me.
Just one thing for me, really, it's really stating the obvious, I guess, so forgive me, but for me, family learning is integral to each of those 4 boxes of the social mobility strategy, particularly the way that Claire describes it. We might not all be doing the access to higher education or making that happen, but we certainly should be. That's my learning from today. We used to, we're not now. There's no reason why we shouldn't.
It needs to be a path, doesn't there? Otherwise, what's the point?
Absolutely. But when you talk about, you know, the 4 blocks of the strategy, that's where family learning is. It's improving outcomes in early years. It's improving outcomes at primary. It is good quality further education. It is contributing to progression and careers and better futures. It is moving people through to HE when we're doing it in that kind of model. So,
and it's doing it within the family, so it's a cultural change.
Absolutely.
I definitely, like, you know, from a personal view, like, you know, not to do with my work, but the way I've learned, because like at the age of 32 I didn't have any qualifications, and when the head teacher, the previous one to Shelley, said to me about, you know, come on, why don't we do GCSE and things like that, I can remember really put my notice in, because I thought I quite happily worked as a learning support assistant in that school and got by. I thought, God, he's going to know now how thick I am. That's how I felt. That's, you know, I can remember feeling like that and thinking, I really let myself down now. Why has he done this to me? And I was, for a week, I really contemplated putting my notes in. And then I did it and obviously progressed and whatever. And I was the first one in my family then to get a degree. I've got 2 now. And then but by the age of 40, a qualified teacher, and then my daughter now, who's 20, is in Reading Uni. Now, she didn't even think about it the way I thought about it. She just naturally, you know, she was always going to go to uni.
Because you were her role model.
So like we've definitely changed my own family the way we've, you know, for me, and now my son will progress the same hopefully. And you know, it's
your experience makes you the best person, why it's so real for your parents. Because actually you've been one of them and you've gone through all that. So you are the most non-threatening.
Yeah, my parents are over the moon. I mean, they're so supportive. They just didn't think, I know now, it wasn't that they didn't push me, they just didn't think it possible because it wasn't possible for them. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't something that our family did, go and get educated. So it's...
No experience or
but it changes like everything, like you say, you know, financially, you know, I'm not claiming benefits that I may have been. You know, we travel, we do, you know, with like anybody else. So like, you know, it's changed our way of life completely. By being educated by community education. So
I think that as well for our parents, when you share those stories, it gives them hope that, oh, if you can do it, I can do it. And I think that's so powerful in what we do, to have our own stories and bring them to what we do.
Does this forum need to do a piece of work then? This is a question around quantifying where we can, how we contribute to those 4 blocks of that social mobility strategy, and giving some qualitative, some case studies, evidence there. Is that what we need to do? Is that helpful?
Well, I don't want... Sorry.
Yeah, no, it would be helpful. And I have collected a few via you, Susan, already. I just need to put them in those boxes, I think, and think about telling the story in a way, like you said, it actually threads through the whole thing.
It's a golden thread for me.
It can actually do all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, not on its own.
No.
But it isn't just
not.
in one box, and that's its strength.
That's right. And what other kind of provision can say that it does that?
Yeah.
I don't know, I've thought about it yet, maybe there is something, but...
No, let's pretend there's not. Let's just be...
Yeah, should we just leave it that there isn't? Yeah, look at what we do, aren't we great?
But there isn't any other kind of provision that does it.
Well, the other thing that strikes me is, could we did this years ago, because I am that old, I remember.
I probably haven't seen it.
I remember when we got data back from the SFA
family learning, it was when it was still LSC at that point,
Yeah.
but we had somebody working with us that said to the LSC that kept all the data, give us the family learning data back for the LSC funded provision and give it us in these kind of ways so that then we can give it back in those kind of ways. So I think we could go there again.
Okay, two things there. Sorry, I'm interrupting Charlotte's done. First of all, in terms of quantifying the contribution to priorities, it's been slower than we expected, but we're just about to launch the new revised flag search survey. We've got a last wee bit of testing to do on it, and that goes through, hopefully, everything, but still making it short. And it does include also that golden thread for the stories. Second one is we have started to put all of the outputs from all of the members in the forum up on a Padlet, which I'll look at later again. I don't want to go on about that because I know that everybody's heard the Common Outcomes Framework and so on and so forth, but I'll say some more about it this afternoon. So hopefully we have taken the first steps to that. The SFA, you're absolutely right, and we have considered a couple of times getting the SFA representative to the forum, and I'll put that on the meeting agenda for next time with that specific question.
What we actually came up with previously.
Yeah, no, that would be really useful if you want to send me that, then I can send it back to me and get the right person. Because you know what SFA is like, or ESFA now, huge departments, all in silos, you've got to be the right person, but that's a great suggestion. Yeah.
We contribute to
they-
everybody's data, we should be able to
Yeah,
look at it.
and I'm talking with my counterpart there, so I do think I know who it is, about how we can use that ILR data stuff in a way that's not going to answer everything, but what we've got at the moment, how can we use it in a way to help demonstrate impact? Do we want to go back to doing things like definitely recording your £1 plus or whatever it might be, so that we can make that case? You give us this much money, government, but look, we actually add to it with this amount, and that's, you know, a useful thing. Apparently it used to be mandatory to do it, now it isn't.
It was in the FLIF programme, and I think it shocked everybody. You know, when you first saw it, you probably thought, oh my God, you know, another piece of work, but actually I think you were really surprised, or I was definitely, when we added up what the value added was.
Community Learning Trust pilots as well.
Yeah,
so,
that's what it was from.
yeah.
So we're still doing it in Sheffield, I bet others are too, because it was quite, for us it's good information, and we do use it to make a case, and we will use it in devolution.
Do you still use the same form, Carrot?
Yeah.
Yeah.